if anybody wants to ask any questions about the Safe System assessment they're currently doing, this is a good time to do that. And you can either pop that into the chat, or you can pop up your hand if you want to verbally ask that question. If you've got out there and had a look, or you're even starting to have a good think about your assignment, and you've got some questions, others will probably have similar questions or will come across those in the future. So it can be very helpful if we have that discussion. So if anybody has any questions about that, yeah, pop your hand up or just type it into the chat. We've got plenty of time in this session allocated to go through any of those requests for clarification or guidance or questions. And if we don't use that time, it'll sort of be handed back to you to really get a move on your Safe System assessment assignment. So today's session's really about the process of Safe System assessments. It's about, I mean, you've had 4 modules where you've really got into the details of the fundamentals of the Safe System, what it is and how we think about it. And I think everybody is nicely on the same page there. Then we really delved into that assessment methodology, thinking about exposure, likelihood, severity, and the different crash types, and categorizing recommendations. And again, I think through the assignments you've done and the quizzes, you're really well placed now, and you're just in that final phase of doing the actual assessment to prove your competency in that aspect. And then the final thing here is asking, or talking about the process of a Safe System assessment within infrastructure projects, policies from different road authorities, different forms of accreditation and recognition of you as a Safe System assessor, and then just sort of wrapping things up with thinking about a few different road environments. Kathy's mentioned in there that you can use the Q&A if you want to anonymously ask any questions about your assignment, or you've got any anything you need to cover. So I suppose I might just mention a couple of things. Now, I mentioned one before, but I'm going to mention it again because I think it's very good at explaining some of the Safe System principles and thinking. So, and it aligns with a question that came in over the email, which we answered. I'm just going to do a T intersection here. That's probably the easiest way to do this. Got some car parking here, and we've got maybe 2,000 vehicles a day on here and 9,000 on this road. Actually, we'll make it it doesn't for the purpose of this, don't worry too much about the turn movements and those sort of things. The likelihood of crash here is influenced by things like sight lines, the intersection control, the lighting, the speed of vehicles, the number of lanes to cross, a whole lot of things associated with that. The exposure is just the addition of those two, the exposure to intersection crashes, but the exposure to runoff road crashes is just the main vehicle volume. So it's just the 9,000. So we'd have a 3. So we would have a 3 for exposure using a scoring reference sheet for runoff road, for head-on, and then for intersection, it would jump up to a 4 for exposure because of the addition. It gets us over that 10,000 mark. So that's one thing. Then if you're worried about this sightline issue here, that vehicles can't see approaching vehicles because of that car parking, and if you proposed to remove the car parking, Okay. You've opened up that sight line. That vehicle is now very clear. You can clearly see the vehicle. That has influenced the likelihood of crash only. Okay, because there's less chance somebody will make that error to pull out. Now, some of you will be saying, but this vehicle's now got better time to see, to slow down, and so any crashes will be slower. And that's true for the bulk of crashes, but we still have that ability that this vehicle is traveling along unabated, they have priority, and this vehicle at the last minute pulls out, and we have the same severity, we have the same angle, so that severity remains. Okay, less numbers of crashes will be at that severity, but they still can absolutely occur. So that's why we'd only call the removal of that parking a supporting treatment. The primary treatment in these situations is the measures that actually change the speed of the bullet vehicles into tolerable levels for that vehicle-to-vehicle crash. So that could be a roundabout, it could be raised platforms, for example. Raised platforms through here, or a raised intersection, something to slow this vehicle down. So that means that that vehicle is going to slow down regardless of whether there's a vehicle coming out or not. And so those are primary treatments, and they address both the likelihood and severity, or sometimes just the severity of crashes. What else do I want to say on that? The other one that, is some people, well, a primary treatment in this scenario would also be to block off the intersection. I think we've been through that sort of example before, but I thought it was worth doing again, and maybe it's sparked a question or two. I'll see. I think some lights are flashing here, which means somebody's asked a question.
Yeah, Ken, what would there be a runoff road exposure figure for each road segment, or do you look only at runoff road for the major road?
That's a very good question, and let me explain that then. I'll draw the intersection again, and okay, there. So you got 9,000 here, and you got, what did I say, 2,000 here. So of course, there is runoff road risk down here for these 2,000. But in this assessment, you would take the 9,000 and assess that if you were doing the intersection. But if you wanted to look at the 2,000, what you'd actually have to do is do another matrix for some other scope down here. So you'd have to do a second matrix. The reason for that is that you end up clouding risk or enhancing risk if you focus on that. So I think the easiest way to explain this is, okay, say you've got power poles close to the road down this, okay? If you then say, well, the likelihood is this number and the severity is this number based on all of that, but you say the exposure is that plus that, then you're saying, there's a high exposure to these risks. Well, there's not, is there? There's a low exposure to that risk, or a lower exposure. It's 2,000. So you need to then sort of separate that out as its own entity. So we take that, and you might make some comments about that in your assessment, but it's for runoff road head-on and generally for other or sideswipe crashes, it's taken off the main volume.
What if it's a four-way intersection?
Again, you take the highest volume road and you assess it. But if you had exactly the same volumes, yeah, you might you might need to do 2 assessments, and just pick one. Go, we're assessing that, and then we're going to assess that and that combined. They could probably combine to an assessment if they're homogeneous, if they've got the same general characteristics.
Thanks, Ken. In your first example that you drew up for us, I'm not sure if we can undo and go back to it or not, but it's probably gone. But there was a clarification question that came in, which is these sorts of changes would have the impact of lower likelihood of high severity and higher likelihood of lower severity. Is that a correct interpretation?
Possibly, yeah. And I mean, a roundabout kind of demonstrates that, which I did put in as one of the options, where we know roundabouts tend to give us some rear end incidents. People make abrupt stops and the like, and the occasional minor bingle. So we do see a little bit of that going on, and that's why we tend to not talk about too much of roundabouts giving us a significant reduction in the likelihood of crashes. But that comment is absolutely correct in the sense that severity of crashes is very much down. So yeah, so it's a reasonable point. Any of this you want to think about from the individual site perspective, but they're generally, I generally agree with that. Some really good questions there, so thank you. And I hope that's helping people get some clarity in their mind around exposure likelihood and severity, but also primary and supporting. But actually, I might just, I think I'm sharing screen, so hopefully I can do this. So hopefully you're seeing the Safe System Assessment Framework now.
Yeah, all good.
So Kathy or Marissa showed you this last time, but this document's in the learning management system, in the resources, and if you get to these tables here, and they've got the runoff road, and they've got treatments, flexible roadside barriers, and they talk about, is that going to influence exposure or likelihood or severity? Severity there, and it's a primary treatment. So you can see that we see these different categorizations laid out for us for different crash types, head-on treatment, all of these ones, then down for intersections. And we've got all these different treatments, and you can see that roundabout. Roundabout's giving likelihood and severity. There you go. We have to accept that because that's what Austroads is saying. Raised platform, other crash types, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. So you're getting some intel, you're getting some information there that helps you as you're going about trying to identify where things might be exposure or likelihood or severity, but you're going to find a lot of things that are not listed in this table that you want to write down, and then your recommendations into primary and supporting treatments. So that can be very, very helpful. So pop that over there. And so questions come in there. Would head-on crash types have the same exposure calculation as runoff road? Yes, they do. So we use that same exposure. Okay. Well, keep the questions coming in throughout today. As I say, plenty of time was allocated for this exact sort of discussion, making sure everybody's on the same page, and there's good learnings from everybody with questions that arise. But of course, you can always get in contact with us as you're ticking along with your safe system assessment and organise a one-on-one catch-up, or shoot through an email question, or phone in, and we'll be able to guide you through that.
And another question about runoff road exposure. Do you consider each direction or the total two-way in terms of exposure?
Total two-way. Good question. Okay. So not a massive amount to cover today, more to ensure that everybody's comfortable and give some time to do quizzes and finish off that assignment. But we do want to talk about some of the benefits of safe system assessments. And we want to do that to help you talk to people about safe system assessments, and the fact that you will be a safe system assessor and the value it can add to public infrastructure by us going through this process. We're going to talk about, well, how are these done? When are they done? What are the steps and those sorts of things? Not specifically how do you do them, the mechanics, because we've already been through that and you're practicing that or proving your competency at the moment with your safe system assessment. And then we'll talk about the difference between safe system assessments and road safety audits, just so you've got that clear in normal. Just a bit of Australia and New Zealand context around safe system assessments and what people are doing. Queensland has requirements for safe system assessments as part of the PMR road safety policy. So all public infrastructure being subject to safe system assessments. Local governments are starting to take them on. We've seen Gold Coast City Council take on safe system assessments in their road safety plan and be committing to those as part of projects. And we're seeing other jurisdictions, we're seeing them starting to emerge in developer funded works as well. So got a good bit of traction in Queensland. New South Wales has just recently made that commitment that safe system assessments required at feasibility, functional design and detailed design stages of all Transport for New South Wales infrastructure projects. So that's in the 2026 Road Safety Action Plan requirements, New Zealand has just combined road safety audits and safe system assessments together into one sort of process. Victoria has commitments to safe system assessments as part of projects. Basically anything above $2 million is subject to a safe system assessment in accordance with the safe system assessment guidelines from the Victorian government. Anything below 2 million may have a safe system assessment still. There's a bit more discretion there. South Australia just copied Victoria, and so that's all the same. And Western Australia has a very different way of operating. They don't do a lot of safe system assessing. They've got other ways they're trying to integrate safe system thinking into their public infrastructure, but some are recognising the value of safe system assessments and doing them, even though they're not a distinct governmental requirement as it is in other jurisdictions. Tasmania sort of is doing them a bit ad hoc, but embracing the idea nonetheless. And the territory it's just appearing in some standard contract specifications, the requirement safe system assessments, which is good, but it's not like it's been bred from a particular policy or something like that. It's just appeared. I'm not sure exactly why. Okay. I might take a question that's come in there. The Austroads Guide has a lot of treatments focused on high speed roads. there any guidance on treatments for lower speed roads, e.g. 50 km/h? Yeah, a lot of those treatments are sort of targeted at those higher speed roads and higher speed road environments. You're right. Certainly, there's a number in there that are good for lower speed environments. But this is where I think we go to our placemaking guidance and take the principles that we know, which is thinking about exposure, likelihood, and severity, and overlay them to some of the wonderful sort of placemaking style treatments we see out there. But certainly when you're in the range of speeds of 50 km/h roads, it gives us a really wonderful and fairly straightforward ability to address speed at conflict points with raised platforms and raised crossings and the like. I think the other one is around the exposure and blocking off some of the access points. Okay, I want to just mention the this evaluation of 35 safe system assessments that was done. There's an independent evaluation done by Blair Turner, and it was when safe system assessments were fairly new. I mean, 35, at least 35 had been done. I think, well, actually a lot more than that had been done, but they just took 35 that had played through the process. They took 35 massive projects, like we're talking town bypasses, major duplications of rural highways. Most of it was high-speed network for this, some arterial road duplication jobs as well. But what they did is used a crash prediction model and took a 20-year crash prediction and then predicted how many deaths and serious injuries would occur. And how many would occur if the projects that were being proposed were never built, if no projects were built. And overall, added all up of these 35 projects and the areas that were being covered, 7,900 serious injuries and 344 fatalities if they don't build those projects in those areas or through the township if they're not going to bypass it or on this road without duplicating. And the crash prediction model was able to take into account, growth and land use changes and predictions associated with that. So the original designs were done by the big design houses usually, and they were like a concept level, sometimes up to maybe a functional level, but not the detailed designs. And you can see there that brought the number of fatalities down to 286 predicted and 6,700 serious injuries. So then a safe system assessment was done on that original design. So just the way you're doing it, looked at the existing conditions, looked at the design, and then made recommendations on what could improve that design for alignment with safe system principles. And you can see there that it reduced the serious injuries down to 3,890 serious injuries and down to 167 fatalities in the prediction model. Then that was, the safe system assessment reports were all handed over to the project team, and they looked at it and they had all these recommendations, primary recommendations, supporting recommendations. And the project teams, as they do, is they looked at them and they said, well, yeah, okay, we can do this one, but we can't do this next one. And we can do this one and this one, but we can't do that one. And they picked what they could do, and then they altered their design. And then that went up a bit and went to 5,300 serious injuries, 227 fatalities. So this tells me quite a story, and I'll talk to this a little bit, and then we'll have a stretch break. We might have that a little bit earlier even, or maybe I'll do a few more slides after this. Anyway, the first thing it says to me is that by doing these big road upgrades, we improve road safety in general. Like, yep, there might be some particular specific incidents where things are made worse, but generally we improve road safety. But the amount we can do to get more improvement is huge. So all of this is potential improvement. The difference here is quite interesting. It's questioning, well, we recommended some stuff, but why aren't they doing it? And this is a highly interesting and complex difference to analyze. But in that one, we see things like concerns that might not be good. The community won't accept that, or concerns politically it won't be accepted. It could be often, well, sometimes it's funding. They can't afford to do that. Budgets are set. Maybe they've uncovered a cultural heritage site, so they can't do that widening that you're suggesting or the like. So there are practical reasons why some of these things can't be done. But in a lot of these cases, we're trying to push and hopefully get people to do some improvements. But I mean, the difference here to here, that is our value of safe system assessments as they sit now. And is literally just going through the process that we were able to systematically look at exposure, likelihood, and severity, identify things, make recommendations. And they were able to, within all of their budgets and constraints and everything like that, make changes to these projects that have made that significant step change in death and serious injury. So it's an immediate win. Now we need to look at this and try to keep improving that and get that change to be lessened. We need, and it's actually working out quite nicely. This point here is coming down. Big design houses are getting better in understanding safe system principles and applying them immediately. But it, so it sort of keeps coming down. It's not down to here, but over time, hopefully we continue to bring it down. So that's pretty interesting. But the one other thing that I reckon some of you might be asking yourselves already is, what on earth is happening here? We've done a safe system assessment and we've made our recommendations, and they're meant to be these, things that virtually eliminate all the death and serious injury out there. How are we still seeing so much residual death and serious injury? And this is where the prediction sort of model and the way that the methodology of this was done is quite sound, and it sort of answers Andrew's question a little bit as well, which ANRAM was the base of this, which is the Australian National Risk Assessment Model. So that's right. And crash history is included there, and some further analysis of crash history in these areas was also undertaken together. A little bit of anomalies that don't sit within the confines of a 64 variable assessment methodology, where you want to be able to delve out of that for one reason or another. But essentially, it was founded on that. But it basically understands that we don't have in our current toolkit an understanding and the framework in which we're working in politically and the like, we don't have the answers to some of these crashes that we're predicting. And they can be things like motorcycles. And so the town bypass one, for example, 110 kilometre per hour road, and it's now going to bypass the town instead of going straight through the middle of it. And the crash prediction model says, well, yeah, but motorcyclists are still, even though we've got barrier systems with motorcycle underarm protection, a motorcyclist hitting a barrier system at 110 kilometres an hour, even with underarm protection, is likely to be seriously injured or potentially kill. The physics of that has not been sorted. So they work well in slightly lower speed environments, often in the touring routes, but we can't just say that's been eliminated. Also, there's incidents where we have things like pedestrians walking along high-speed roads at night. And yeah, we can solve that by, bringing speeds down to 30 or 20 kilometers an hour. But these are, major outer suburban arterials. They're identified as traffic routes, they're movement corridors. And that just wouldn't fly in terms of what's accepted under these projects. It's a bigger picture sort of land use challenge, and there's all sorts of factors we need to sort of work on outside of that. But the ability for the assessment methodology in its own right and the recommendations out of that, it was not able to eliminate death and serious injury. Gee, I mean, it's done a pretty great job in helping, but we need to work on this. We need to work on all of this through innovation, through moving communities' attitude towards some treatments, and we need to think about strategic land use. We need to think about public policy, and a whole lot of stuff that we're going to need to be working on to bring that one down. This one, we're going to, work on lobbying for more funding, getting more people to understand the safe system philosophy, to incorporate that into designs to be more accepting of some of this. Yeah, so I think that tells quite a rich story, this little chart, but happy to answer people's questions or comments on it at any point. Okay, let me just jump into another slide or two, and then I'll give you your stretch break. We just got pointed out of the Victorian government's document, actually, some of the benefits of safe system assessments as identified through those evaluation, but also through their operation of using safe system assessments for 7 years now. Great way to determine how well a project aligns with safe system principles. And that's been a real shortfall in us before the assessment methodology, because it was really opinion-based. I mean, yes, there was agreement in the high-level strategic idea of, at that philosophical concept of the safe system, but once it was down to on-ground decision-making, there was just argument. It's a great method to compare project design options from a safe system perspective. So a road safety audit is not about comparing and scoring options. It's clearly stated within the Australia's Guide to Road Safety Part 6 and throughout road safety audit policies across the world. That's not its purpose, but the safe system assessment methodology is good for that. You've seen the way you could score things and you can get that input. Really good at providing information on design changes that will improve alignment with safe system principles, and a good method for assisting planners, designers, project managers to move the safe system from that theoretical thing to on-ground decision-making, actual practice, and a sound basis for future planning and road design. So let's just go through the process of a safe system assessment. And the first thing is to say, well, when in a project's life cycle would it be good? And most jurisdictions still operate in saying, well, if we can do that safe system assessment early on and get that feel for safe system alignment, that's going to make decisions on the intersection form, the cross-section. It's going to help us make those calls. Then when we've made those decisions around cross-sections, intersection form, the details, the very specific details, a road safety audit lends itself quite well to that. Yeah, so generally early on safe system assessments and then road safety audits to follow. Not to say that safe system assessments can't be done further down the track, but that just seems to be a process that works well. But what is the difference there? What is the difference between a road safety audit and a safe system assessment? Well, there used to be a lot of difference, and this difference is, I suppose, starting to shallow down a bit. But this table here helps a little bit. Identify issues that impact the likelihood of crashes. Both methodologies are really good at that. Issues that impact on the severity of crashes. I say sometimes for road safety audits, they're getting better. I mean, severity is part of the risk assessment methodology in a road safety audit. However, it's more at a practical level. We just used to see a lot, and we still continue to see these come through, where the road safety audit is focused on the likelihood factors, sight lines, surface, confusing signage, hugely important likelihood factors, and we've got to get all of that right. But the severity was ignored when these happened. So they were basically saying, oh, if you fix up all the signage, we won't have any crashes. Well, the safe system assessment is saying, you fix up all the signage, and that's good because we'll lessen the chance of a crash. But a crash is still going to occur, and we need to address how bad that's going to be. Exposure really wasn't as its own distinct element looked at in road safety audits. It was embedded and entwined into likelihood. They both make recommendations to improve road safety, unless you're in New South Wales, where a road safety audit won't make recommendations. That's not part of the scope of works of a road safety audit in New South Wales. It's simply to identify issues and leave it to the designer and project team to work out how they're going to address those. But everybody else puts recommendations in an audit, as you do in a safe system assessment. And they both consider all road users. The focus really in the end output for a safe system assessment is around death and serious injury only, whereas road safety audits tend to gravitate, well, they have more ability to think of other injury crashes, minor injury crashes, and even property damage style crashes as well. So in the full safe system assessment, we ask those qualitative questions, which give us really those safer vehicles, people, even things like you can work on, can it be maintained, post-crash care. And then fundamental redesign of projects is more suited to safe system assessments and encouraging of innovation. That's been one of the biggest advantages of safe system assessments I've seen, is that if you have something that is innovative, a road safety audit can, and I say it shouldn't be, but it can be a real inhibitor to innovation, because the auditor is very sort of critical, and their purpose is to critique a design for risks. But that is all of their job is. They don't make any mention of the overall safety benefit of this innovation. That's not their job. They just list all the issues. Whereas a safe system assessment presents how much improvement we're going to get, and then lists some issues that could be enhanced. And that can be a really helpful thing for people trying to innovate, because they say, look, overall, this is making such huge improvements. Okay, we need to work on these little issues, as opposed to getting a road safety audit report and go, oh, we've got 25 issues here. And that can make it look like it's not a helpful project. Safe system assessment's very versatile in the sense that you can do a whole community, you could do a mine site, you could do a individual location. It's versatile. You can do a route, and that's really helpful. So the process of a safe system assessment goes along the lines of you determine, are you going to do a full safe system assessment or are you going to do a rapid safe system assessment? I will tell you the difference between those, and they're not markedly different, but there is a difference. And that is the end asset manager's purview. They make the decision. Is it going to be full or rapid? And then they select a safe system assessment team. And then there's this sort of exchange of information. Could be a sit-down meeting, could be emails and a phone call, whatever it is. But it's all about the assessment team getting the information they need to do the assessment. It's about the any questions being asked, any clarification. It's about the client or those people getting the assessment done, know the process, what's going to happen. I will, in the next couple of slides, tell what the difference between the rapid and the full safe system assessment is. Then the site is inspected and the reviewing of the designs and the matrices are completed. It could be one matrix if it's just existing conditions, and they say, we want a safe system assessment of the existing conditions of this intersection, and that's all you do. Or if they've got 25 design options on the table, well, you would do 26 matrices. You would do one of the existing conditions, and then you would do a matrix for all of the different design options. If somebody came to me with 26 design options, I'd say perhaps do some refining of that first. That's you're just gonna do a lot of work in matrices, but it's possible. Then if you're doing a full safe system assessment, you consider those other elements of the safe system through those qualitative questions we gave you. They're in the Austroads framework. I talked you through in the end of last session, all of these specifics. And then we identify treatments that are going to improve alignment with safe system principles. So that's, there are recommendations or things for the project team to consider adding or changing. It's all written up in a fairly standard form, and you're using one of those templates at the moment, which we encourage you to reuse if you're doing, when you're doing assessments in the future. Brand it in your own branding is fine, and there's no copyright issues on any of that. It's about consistency in industry and the reporting of safe system assessments. And then the receiver of the assessment report accepts what they're able to change and changes these things accordingly and improves the design and incorporates them in. So that's our overarching process. Sometimes at this phase here, it goes back to here. So, it's assessed, changes are recommended. The client says, yep, okay, we're going to take all of these on. Can you do a final matrix for us on what we've ended up deciding to do? And that actually, I like that for a number of reasons. One is the story it can beautifully tell, because if you are able to then, take this up to your management or part of your business case and you say, this was our original, or this is the existing condition, and this is the risk score or safe system alignment score, and we want the lowest score is better. That's the existing conditions. We came up with a design that was here, and then we got it safe system assessed, and they come up with recommendations, and that's brought it down to here, right? You're able to show that story. Hey, we got some good designers in, they did a decent job, they improved things. But hey, we've really pushed hard because of our commitment to getting the absolute best we can, and we've got it down to there. But that tells that story. And anybody who then says, well, you're not, you're not pushing for safe system alignment, you're not pushing for safety. That's great sort of evidence that you are. Now we're going on time here. I'll keep going with a couple more slides because it's not quite half time, although, well, let me just cover this off. I promise I am coming back to the difference between rapid and full safe system assessments, but I want to point you at something which is around your accreditation. And there are different schemes around Australia which formally recognise safe system assessors on government databases. Some jurisdictions just say, if you've got a certificate from a safe system assessment course, we're happy enough with that. But certainly Victoria has a register of safe system assessors. So it's on the VicRoads web page, safe system engineering page. And what they say is you have to do this course. So you're successfully passed the course. So you're well on your way to that. Then you just got to submit a safe system assessment that you've done. They will review it. And if they believe that shows that you have the capability and the competency to do a safe system assessment, they will put you onto that list. And the list is just a PDF list that gets updated with people's name and their organisation, email address, and phone number if you want it displayed. So that's one. And then the South Australian government has a list of pre-qualified safe system assessors. So they use the term pre-qualified in a different manner to most other jurisdictions. Most other jurisdictions, pre-qualification is associated with a company or a consultancy and their insurances, and and then they've got the ability to do this. And they, pre-qualification in South Australia often lands with individuals as well as companies, but there's a list there. Now, to get on this list is actually easier because they simply say, if you've done a recognised safe system assessment course and send us a scan of the certificate, we will add you to this list. So our course is the accepted course, and they say, yep, if you've done that course, show us a certificate and we'll add you to the list. They don't require you to submit a safe system assessment and review it. So that's the easier one to get onto if you just want to be recognised and have that on your CV and be able to talk to people about your accreditation. If you want to have the Victorian one, it's good. It's a little bit more work though. So different jurisdictions have different requirements and different triggers as to when you would or wouldn't do safe system assessments. Victoria, for example, anything over $2 million requires a safe system assessment, and mostly a full safe system assessment. Anything under 2 million either requires a rapid safe system assessment or some sort of way to prove that you've done everything you can to get as much alignment with safe system principles as you can. There's a bit more information on there, but it does probably get me to the point where I do need to start talking about the difference between that full and that rapid. And so I'll put these on the screen. But what I'm going to do is pop those on the screen for now, and we're going to take a 5-minute stretch and coffee break, and I'll come back and explain it. But if you get back early, you can have a little bit of a read yourself. But let's take 5 minutes and we'll get back into it after that. Okay, so I'm going to address some questions that have come in, and as I say, I'll see if Andrew, I'll give Andrew the ability to unmute in a minute. I'll just deal with Brock's question first, which was around the crash prediction of fatal serious injuries, and how do we go about doing that? And are there good ways to do it. Brock's talking a little bit about, like predicting traffic volume on roads in the future and those sort of challenging things to do. There is some science behind it, and then there's some art to it, I suppose. And I think the use of crash reduction factors, as Brock said, is one way that it is done. They get better and better. I'm going to just show you this, which if you are working in this space, you should know about. It's the Crash Modification Clearinghouse. It's basically an area that it's managed by Virginia Tech, I think, but funded by the US Federal Highways Administration. But it is the collection of before and after studies from around the world on treatments to give you a crash modification factor, which is it's actually the inverse of the crash reduction factor. And so what it is anybody who does a big before and after study of road safety treatments, so it could be roundabouts, could be signals, could be edge line, could be line mark, could be lighting, could be anything like that. You are then able to find what crash reduction factor did they get, and how do we aggregate all of these studies from all around the world to give us a bit of a feel for the specific crash reduction we would get for that treatment. So it's pretty good. It's pretty comprehensive, and it goes beyond just guessing at how effective something will be. There's a lot of quality research and science behind a lot of our understanding of how effective road safety treatments would be. The other one I want to point you to is IRAP, the International Road Assessment Program. And I've logged into my Vita dashboard here, which is a program. But this takes a lot of the crash modification factors and puts it into a form where you're able to get some understanding of the risk alteration of different road environments. So I'll just use the demonstrator. Some of you probably use IRAP or may have used it in the past, but it's where you get a star rating for the risk of a road, and you've got all these characteristics that you can put in, and it spits out a different risk score. So you can use urban environments, for example, and you'll see that's a standard urban environment. And then you might change some attributes. You might say, well, actually the speed at this location is not 70. It's actually down at 50, and then the operating speed's down at 50. And you can see our star ratings have jumped up from a 3-star to a 4-star. But that's the star rating is the simplistic aspect of it. And it's a great tool to actually talk to the community or politicians or the public about safety of roads, because people kind of know star ratings. They know star ratings of fridges for energy efficiency. So star rating of roads for safety makes sense. But down here, you'll see 2.71, 3.27. This is where the detail is in crash prediction modeling if you want to do it. Because you can take these and you can convert those to predicted fatal serious injury outcomes based on adding in traffic volume and crash history of an area, and you're able to alter it and predict accordingly. So that's a pretty nice, easy one. Then there are much more complicated ones like, ANRAM's based off the same thing. It's just a bit harder to use. It doesn't have this nice clean interface to use. And then there are some other more academic style crash prediction models that you can use. So that was a good question. Thank you. And let's see. I'm going to just make it so Andrew could unmute himself if he wants to. May have been an accidental press of the button, or you are wanting to say hi, Andrew.
No, hi. No, it's just a quick question. Sorry.
No, it's great.
Thanks for the opportunity, Ken. Just a quick one. I just want to obviously convey the fact that the different criteria that you've stated before regarding the adoption of SSAs in different states, okay? And as you indicated previously, with Victoria, it's under 2 million, it's optional, okay? $2 million worth of road infrastructure changes. Now, considering the when you had the comparison between road safety audits and SSAs and all that, and obviously the impact the SSAs will have in reducing the serious injuries and fatalities. Why are we so strict on in mandating SSAs in Victoria? Because even in our work functions here, for instance, we've say external developer funded works, we ask for road safety orders as a matter of course, but the in terms of safe system assessments, I don't think there's too many focus on that as much, and I'm just wondering, why are we not promoting it more in Victoria, like other states, like for instance New South Wales or even New Zealand, that is actually integrating SSAs and RSAs, for instance, because there's obviously benefits to be derived, and just seems to me that mandating it in excess of $2 million gives the impression that it's not as I don't know, it's not as compulsory.
Your point's really good, Andrew, and it's an interesting one where Victoria actually led the way in safe system assessment, and the idea of even mandating it for these larger projects was not something anybody else was doing, and now, sort of, as I say, about six years after that, other states have jumped ahead now and are far more progressive with it, identifying the value it has provided. And so it is probably time, Victoria starts to relook at that and potentially moves either down the track of New Zealand with that integration, or starts to ask for safe system assessments from others or within projects for potentially lower values. But then, Austroads should eventually get to a point of trying to put out more information. Either we get an Austroads integration of safe system assessments into road safety auditing, which would help, because then you just stick with your audit. Like if a developer funded, as you're managing a lot of, you're requiring the developer to do a road safety audit in accordance with the latest Austroads guide, which would include safe system assessments, and we've sort of resolved that as such. But I mean, this is the messiness of government policy, isn't it? And things aren't, take time to get to where you want them to be, and by the time you get there, you want the next one. But that's okay. But thank you, Andrew.
Can I just ask very quickly, because I also got just if I can be bold enough to ask another quick question. So you mentioned before crash reduction factors.
Yeah.
And they're overall to all types of casualty severity. How do we translate that to serious and fatal? Yeah.
So generally, when jurisdictions have put out their crash reduction factors, they talk about it for all crashes. So you're spot on there, Andrew. But in that crash modification clearinghouse that I mentioned, you are able to identify it for fatal serious injury, or for other crash or all crashes, and also by crash types as well. So it's very detailed ability to do that if that's something you need.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew. Always a pleasure. Good. Okay. Well, we've covered off a couple of really great questions there, and it just shows this group has quite a high level of knowledge around the management of public infrastructure and the safety assessment techniques and what we're trying to achieve. And so I'll just be able to finalize and wrap this all up here by talking a little bit about that full safe system assessment versus rapid safe system assessment. And the full safe system assessment, you can see there has quite a number of lists of things that you've got to do. And the rapid has a smaller list. And probably the easiest way for me to go through this is to talk about the full and just point out the ones you don't really have to do or are optional as part of a rapid. So the commencement meeting is an optional as part of a rapid. I mean, for a full one, as I say, they want you to have some sort of catch up with the project team to really understand things in a full safe system assessment. You're going to need the background and context because you can't do anything without understanding that. The idea of a workshop, which kind of links often with this, it's a bit optional, but usually that's all combined together. Site inspection is one where it's not specified as required with a rapid safe system assessment, but it is often done. You need to do the matrix and the existing conditions and all the designs. You don't need to consider the other safe system elements, those qualitative questions in a rapid. You do need to make recommendations. You just do a shorter report, and then, yep, they accept changes, they make changes, and they amend the design. So, you know, it's sort of 75%. A rapid is about 75% of a full. So it's not like it's, you know, one takes an hour and the other takes a week. They're close-ish. Okay, so it's at this point, I just want to talk about some different road environments, and I'll do it fairly quickly. But I want to talk about these different road environments and what aligns highly with safe system principles in these road environments, and maybe what we could do better. But the reason I want to do this is because your assignment that you're doing is a safe system assessment on a specific location and a specific road, road stereotype, road characteristic. It might be an urban roundabout, or you might be doing a more arterial road intersection. But when you finish this course and we say, yep, there's your certificate, you are a safe system assessor, it's not saying you're a safe system assessor only on local roads or only on arterial roads or only for roundabouts or anything like that. It's everything. You should be able to take those principles, the assessment technique, and apply it anywhere where we have roads or paths or that interaction. So what I kind of feel is that if we're doing that, and you might be in the future doing a safe system assessment of a motorway or something like that, I just want to have touched on a few of the things we know about motorways that would improve alignment with safe system principles, what's good, what's not so good, but also do that for residential environments, strip shopping centres, mixed-use arterials, low and high volume rural roads, so the outer suburban arterial roads, and then motorways, and also the major rural highways. So that full rounded lot. Okay, so let's start with residential environment. Maybe I'll ask you just to get you typing in and maybe give out a prize or two, as I like to do. For these sorts of environments, usually a 50 km/h default speed limit, you know, accessing onto a more major road out here. What are the kind of things that you think we would be suggesting in our safe system assessment to improve alignment with safe system principles? And I'll just have a look at the questions to see if anything else is coming in. Okay, good stuff coming in there. And Andy's made a good comment in there. That it's great practice to ensure people know that they should be doing these assessments. And I think that's gets us a good culture. If people are calling out that these assessments are required, we're going to be in a better position to be able to see improvements to our projects. Right, okay, so we're seeing lots of people who are trying to address the speed and using local area traffic management or speed management devices. And that's really good, because we established last module around movement of place and these local environments not doing things that are trying to keep speeds of vehicles high, because that's not the purpose of these areas. They are simply there to provide local access and maybe to pick up the rubbish and those sort of things. So we can significantly alter the speed to reduce the likelihood and severity of crashes. We can also question access from an exposure perspective. Do we need to have all of this open access? And the use of local area traffic management is a wonderful one, and we've known that for a long time, that it's a good road safety thing. It's a good road safety thing because it addresses the likelihood and severity of crashes, and it's not reliant on just people following the speed limit signs. Yep, so any alterations to car parking to open up sight lines or the like, just always be careful to not widen the road. And if you widen the road, that could, as in, if you removed all car parking off here, vehicles would go through here fast. And so we don't want to see that. So you complement it with local area traffic management. And Matt's asked, a bit more about, what's good local area traffic management and what kind of things do we do? Well, there is a Australia's Guide to traffic management, traffic management of local areas. I can't remember which the part is exactly. Somebody will be able to do that. And there's some really great information in there. But local area traffic management really consists of any features to slow vehicles through these residential environments. So they can be anything from speed humps to chicanes to urban roundabouts, one-way slow points, narrowing of road sections. So they're all sort of features, and where you put them, the spacing of them, and the design of them, they're all sort of detailed considerations in a local area traffic management study. But the physical presence of these is really effective. I mean, we know we get effect by if we put say a 30 km/h area speed limit around somewhere like this. We know we get some effect to that, but it's not as effective as actually putting in these features to complement that lower speed limit. I'll give a prize if you can tell me where this is, but I'll talk to this one myself. I won't get you to do too much. I mean, these areas where we know that they are places for people, near Coles. Yes, correct, near Coles. Places for people, and we really want to enhance that livability, that place feel of it. And oh yeah, Ross is on it, and I think it's maybe because Ross can see that it's actually written there. Well played. Prize for Ross. Yeah, so people will often, when trying to improve safe system alignment of an area like this, gravitate towards things like fencing off putting fences here and maybe one pedestrian crossing somewhere. But that's just eroded the placemaking feel of the area. And so even if you are able to get even if you are able to get better safe system alignment with something like that, it's not what we want. So first of all, establish the context, the movement and place characteristics, what is trying to be achieved by this area strategically, and then our safe system elements fall out. So these areas should be very, very slow, like very, very slow if they have vehicles at all. Unfortunately, this one was 40 kilometers an hour for a long time. I mean, it's the legacy of 40 being seen as a very low speed environment, but it lasted, 15, 20 years at that, with quite a few people killed in this area as a result of avid retaining of that that speed, where it should be very much lower than that. Mixed use arterials, highly problematic, because usually, like for the one back there, it's kind of accepted, it's a place, and you should be able to put a very good case forward to speeds of very much crawling of cars. But these are the ones where people tend to give everything priority, and it's a nightmare, because you say, well, what is this? And it's that one where it's pedestrian priority, car priority, it's a major traffic route, it's a bus route, it's a they want cyclists to be going down there, and it's such a huge challenge. And I think when we looked at those artistic impressions in the last one, and we talked about how you can still retain decent through movement for people and goods with some changes, I think there's good options there. Advantages and little tweaks and things that we can do. Certainly use of things like traffic signals with dwell on red or rest on red scenarios, which is where you would phase the traffic signals so that their default is to be red for vehicles during late night party times, Friday night, Saturday night. And so the vehicles are slow going through there because they have to come up to a red light, and then it'll just go green for them to go through, and then it's back to red, and it slows everything down, recognizing we're going to have intoxicated pedestrians all through this area. Raising these crossings as well, and raising intersections, not only works to address the conflict point, but also act as that local area traffic management feature. So we're able to slow vehicles through an area. It's not that straight, fast run where somebody, if they wanted to, at 2 in the morning or when it's clear, could go at 100 kilometers an hour down. Well, the raising of those stops that really from happening to a degree. Separation of road user types, slowing of vehicle speeds to get us within or closer to safe system tolerable levels is sort of where we move towards on these. Like our low volume rural roads, there's just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kilometres of this and lower order roads around Australia. And the real simple answer is that speeds will be reduced on roads that we can't afford to invest in the infrastructure. It's easy to say. Rolling that philosophy out is a challenge. However, the safe system and the physics and the philosophy around it dictate that we need lower travel speeds on this, or we need significant infrastructure investment to have continuous barrier systems and the like. So as we sort of roll that out, there's obviously I'll work with the community and people to gather more support for this and acceptance and deal with little isolated challenges associated with that. I say little isolated challenges, there'll be lots of them, but there are still lots of things we can do to reduce the likelihood of crashes when we're thinking our safe system assessment. The likelihood, and they're all the things that we've done forever in road safety, really. I mean, you've got your sealed shoulders and enhanced delineation and correct signs and guideposts. More newer things around audio tactile centerline and edge line, and then trying to highlight specific intersections with using some technology potentially with side activated speed limits and warning signs and the like. But in our bigger roads, more high volume roads, doesn't look too high volume at the moment, but yeah, it is a higher volume road. These will get the infrastructure investment in order to keep speeds high, and that will include central barrier systems and outer barrier systems to gain that full containment road, and the speeds are then able to be kept high. And as we arrive at intersections, I mean, that's going to be a problematic area. If you've got a central barrier system down a road, you've got to stop it for the intersection. But you can utilize major intersections. This is a really sort of simplistic, but if you put a roundabout, you're able to collect, minor roads and access points and make it so this is the point of U-turn. So you don't need to break your barrier down the middle. And also you're getting all of that wonderful safe system benefit for the intersection itself. So you get multiple wins from strategically thinking about rollout of infrastructure along a route. And that's safe system route strategies really are that thoughtful. If you've got a whole route and you've got lots of roads and access points and side roads, major roads, and and the like, you can think about it from that holistic perspective of saying, well, okay, we want to do all of this, but we can't afford to do this 50 kilometers all in one hit. But let's think about where we get the best bang for our buck from a holistic sort of 2050 scenario. And what's it look like in 2050, which is often the date people are aiming for zero death and serious injury? What does this look like in 2050 if we've been able to get the funds we want? And then how do we sort of step back from that and say, okay, the best way to roll this out, is to put a roundabout here first so we can get central barrier systems here and here without having to, break them up. And then next we're going to go with a roundabout here, and we're able to do that section, and then you sort of segment this out. That site is now a roundabout, Ross. So it wasn't a compact roundabout. It was a bit before compact roundabouts became a thing, but I absolutely agree with you. It'd be an absolute ripper. We could have saved a good $3 or $4 million by going with a compact one on that, and maybe built another one. High volume outer suburban arterial roads or outer arterial roads. These are, I generally talk about ones where it's been acknowledged it's a traffic route and it is trying to move vehicles through there at speed. And this is where we can't fool ourselves into believing that mixing vulnerable road users and high-speed vehicles is somehow magically going to be a safe thing to do. So on-road cycle facilities on 80K roads it's just unacceptable. Separated facilities, it has to be completely separated facilities, and then should be pedestrian overpasses and underpasses, or these intersections that you slow everybody down through that conflict point, because nothing can happen at 80 kilometers an hour and be aligned with our safe system threshold speeds at an isolated intersection like that. You would need acceleration lanes or these sort of things. So vehicles have to be slowed down at those specific locations. Motorways and the like, and I've only got 3 slides to go before I take any final questions, and then if Kathy's back, which I think she is, she'll show you how to finish off the course in the learning management system. Otherwise, I'll dive in and do that. Motorways are very well aligned with safe system principles because of the physical infrastructure environment. Separated streams of traffic, you know, trying to eliminate vulnerable road users from these areas. So there's not a vulnerable road user in a high-speed vehicle. Acceleration on ramps, so you've got delta V, your change in velocity at crash point is low. You know, good lighting, great geometric alignment. So they really tend to have this high alignment with safe system principles, except for at a couple of points, and a couple of points in time usually. And the time is when we see flow breakdown, and that's as the number of vehicles gets to a point, and we'll start to see the vehicles hard braking, and rear end becomes a real crash problem here, especially associated often with larger vehicles as well due to higher mass. And then we get the occasional incidents where we have vulnerable road users entering these environments, often getting out of taxis late at night and the like. So to get that further enhancement of safe system principles, we end up in managed motorway territory, which gets us further reduction in the likelihood of crashes usually. So managed motorways, for those aren't familiar, is where you put lane use management systems. So you can change speeds dynamically through either traffic volume and algorithms to identify when vehicle flow breakdown is going to occur, and predicting that and lowering speeds early. You're able to manage lanes and try and cross lanes off. You also would have, you know, on-ramp signals, so ramp metering and the like, which could which again reduces likelihood of crashes. Yeah, so those are the kind of things that we see to give us our additional reduction in the likelihood of crashes. And finally, major rural highways are you know, full containment with barrier systems. If you're building one new, you don't need that much land in the middle, unless you plan to widen it to 3 lanes at some point in the future. Just barrier system down the middle would be fine. But in these scenarios, retrofit with continuous barrier systems, as this is a Hume has nowadays. It's got that full containment. And then when you get to intersections, yeah, grade separated intersections or roundabouts, which I still like, they're not popular on those major national routes, but from a safe system perspective, they do well. But if it's an at-grade intersection, it can operate in very high alignment with safe system principles on a road like the Hume or the Calder or these sort of things, by having, you know, if you've got the intersection that's got a big median, or the median would continue on, you really would have to have full-length acceleration lane, time for them to be able to get across, a U-turn facility and acceleration lane. But then you can certainly have a vehicle come in, accelerate up to a point where delta V is within tolerable limits, change in velocity, the comparison between those vehicles. They're able to transfer over, same thing, accelerate back, delta Vs, and then make their turn or go straight. So that's sort of the one way it could be done. Okay, I'm going to give you some time back now, instead of jumping into extra content. Sharing there. But I'll check if anybody's got any questions. Any final questions? Kathy or myself will just jump through the learning management system. Oh, Kathy's back. Hello.
Howdy. Thank you, Ken. Okay, so where we're at is you are working on your safe system assessment, and what you'll do is you've got your template, you've got your graph generator, you've got your site. And so if you haven't already been out to site, do get out there and work on that. Now it is due, it should tell me here, but it is due in a week's time. So basically by close of business next Thursday, please. So that is one of the last things that you need to do and submit, and they will be marked in the week after that. We do have a quiz in this module here, so you do need to do your final quiz question and make sure all your other quizzes have been completed as well. And we will need you to do some answer a few feedback questions. And then what should also appear down the bottom here is a certificate, and it's not showing up just at the minute, but I promise it will appear once you have completed all your quizzes and received at least 80% on average, and you've done your 2 assignments. So your safe system assessment, and that's been marked, and your earlier one that you had in module 2, your just little brief exercise on telling us about exposure, likelihood and severity. And I think that's about it. Are there any final questions in terms of what you need to do to finish off the program? Remember, there are a lot of resources in the resources section. So you've got your safe system assessment framework. In there, you've got a whole bunch of examples as well, different guidelines from around the country. And the other thing we've got in here too is those fact sheets, a link to the fact sheets. There we go. Like watching paint dry sometimes, isn't it? So those fact sheets will help you if you have any questions around some of those trickier things. I think that's about it.
Great. Thank you. There was one question. Andrew has his hand up, but that may have been the hangover from when he had his hand up before. I might put Andrew's hand down. Andrew, if you did want to have one more question, probably hand up again. But the question in from Matt, thoughts on net zero philosophy as part of safe system assessment, whether less trips, problem movement, managing travel growth is possibly a part of it. So net zero tends to be talked about from a carbon emissions perspective. But if we're talking about zero, so I'm just not 100% sure on that question, whether it's zero deaths and serious injuries or zero FSI. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's a complex one. We're just embarking on a Austroads project at the moment to help get more clarity on that Path to Zero project. It has to include better land use and better understanding of travel mode and an acknowledgement of it. It's got to be a fundamental shift in the way we think about moving people and goods, especially within urban areas. So absolutely. And yeah, it's very sort of complex in how we get there, not just from the choices around physical infrastructure, but the choices in how we go about managing society from existing expectations to future scenarios, which are changed. But that's all right, like a challenge.
Well,
okay, I want to give people some time back. Oh, sorry, was there another question?
No, I was just going to say, don't forget we're still here after these sessions. So if you have any questions or if you're having any trouble with anything, shoot through an email to myself or Marissa or the training team or to Ken, and we can set up a one-on-one chat if you like, just to run you through if you're getting to the point of doing your assessment and you're just not sure about things. So we can certainly set that up. If you do need an extension, do try and get it in the next week. Good to get it all over and done with, especially with end of financial year coming up. I'm sure you've got plenty of other things to compete with your time. But yes, just keeping communication, keep talking to us.
Yeah. Thank you to you and to Marissa as well for all the work behind the scenes making this happen. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for their time and their input and their enthusiasm. It's just wonderful that people want to address the death and serious injury that occurs on our road network, and I think this is a great tool to help do that. I want you out there doing safe system assessments, so if I can help in any way to make that happen, let me know. Whether you want advice, whether you need an example of a safe system assessment, whether you want to contact in your jurisdiction that you can do assessments with, or anything, just reach out, because we need lots of you doing lots of assessments on lots of projects. So thank you very much. Absolutely love it. And we hope to see you at a future Safe System Solutions training course.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for your experience and passion and knowledge and sharing.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.